brothers and sisters, I'd like to welcome you to this, the 20th anniversary of the Cthulhu Prayer Breakfast. Hallelujah. I'd like to give the announcements, as I always used to do in church. I have some interesting news to share. It seems the Obama administration has ordered Arkham House to pull all copies of books by H.P. Lovecraft. They've issued guidelines to S.T. Joshi for the preparation of politically corrected texts of Lovecraft's fiction. And I thought I'd better share some of them with you, so it's not too much of a surprise to see. From now on, the black cat in The Rats in the Walls will be named African-American male. Similarly, Shub Nagurath will now be referred to as Shub African-Americanath, the African-American goat of the nature preserved with 1,000 anchor babies. And Deep Ones will appear in the PC version of The Shadow of Rinsmouth as Polynesian Americans. Similarly, Hickman's Goon Changelings will henceforth be protein recycling exchange students. The outer ones from Yucca will be dubbed undocumented miners from the dwarf planet Pluto. The notorious corpse-eating cult of Leng will be printed as Asian Mystery Meat franchise. Now, what were traditionally called the Great Old Ones in less sensitive times will now be denominated the Great Seniors, or the Greatest Generation. The name Keziah Mason will be substituted with Nancy Pelosi. Jewish shopkeepers, whom Lovecraft called Levites, will now be called oppressors of the Palestinian people. Cthulhu cult human sacrifices will be referred to as workplace violence. Wilbur Whately's plan to clear the earth of pesky human light will now be called environmentalism. As for Abdul al-Hazred, he will no longer be slurred as the mad Arab, but rather the Yemenite with an alternative worldview. His famous book, the Necronomicon, instead of containing magic incantations, will be a compendium of federal regulations, and it will henceforth, they're pretty darn long, too. It will now be known as the Necrobamicon. And as for the horror at Red Hook, it will no longer be published anymore. Won't you join me in what a friend we have in Dagon?
Oh the Esoteric Order of Dagon, where all the women are sponus, all the men are amorphous, and all the children look like Marty Feldman. But it's been a rough couple of seasons in a row for the temple, as you all are well aware. Membership is way down, and while we've struggled with PA system feedback, and to combat the attrition of old members and the downright depressing lack of new recruits, we've been dealt a number of other setbacks. The IRS revoked our tax-exempt status after a review of our activities in the last election. We worked quite hard to get space meat and the plutonium drug legalized in 7 states, in this close in California, and also to get the reconstituted essential salts personhood bill run through on a ballot in Massachusetts, which, sad to say, was a huge success. Maybe Joseph Kerwin wasn't as solid a gubernatorial candidate as he seemed at first blush. But his promise to convert the state to windwalker power was too tempting to resist. And we probably do the same again. And that, my friends, is why we are friends and fingerlings, I've done some serious soul searching, especially after my last vacation in the South Pacific. As you probably already know, there is a morass of plastic waste collecting out there that recently overtook Texas in service area, prompting several whole counties of Texans to relocate out there en masse and stockpile fertilizer and go dynamite fishing. Now I know that the sea level is expected to steadily rise up to 3 feet over the next 20 years, which would drown all of humankind's largest coastal cities. But anyone who thinks this is a victory has obviously never smelled New Jersey when it's wet. Yes, the prophet Bojo, he tried to warn us. Anyway, while I was lying on the slightly radioactive beach and fending off sand crabs the size of gophers while my wife was shopping for souvenirs at the Panapi Walmart, the lifeguards ordered everyone out of the ocean and a red tidal wave covered me in pulverized polyvinyl chloride nuggets and AOL renewal CDs. And I was filled with despair when I thought, is this really where we're going to spend eternity? Paddling around in sewage and pimping mermaids like horny Mormon missionaries until the stars are right. And I finally understood why we're not as popular as we used to be. Now I know you're wondering why I've chosen to take such a despairing tone at this unique celebratory prayer breakfast. But it is no accident. In fact, it's the least accidental thing I've ever done. For I have not come to praise Cthulhu, Dagon, or Hydra, but to fillet, batter, dip, and deep fry them. That's right. As of this moment, I'm declaring a schism. Make no move toward the exits, my minions, have you surrounded. And you will not be released until you have heard the awful truth about Cthulhu, as an eminent mythos scholar told me it was correctly pronounced. And acknowledge the superior incunabula and after-school daycare programs of the Temple of Log Sleuth-Off. That's right, right? Yes. Lovecraft himself preferred to think of his canon as the Yog Sothoth mythos and referred to his body of work as Yog Sothothery, and professed to be confused that others had taken to naming his body of weird mythology for Cthulhu simply because he was delineated first. Why, following this kind of specious logic would have one rename the alphabet the A's, simply because A was the sound of the first grunt. If his graven images are to be taken literally, Cthulhu was a winged creature incapable of conventional flight, and has been pointed out time and time again, a seemingly all-powerful aquatic creature trapped underwater by the power of astrology and decorative paving stones. He's a crudely conceived heraldic chimera, more suitable for bookends, wood ornaments, and bowling trophies than for serious eschatological meditation. A deeply confused humanoid body that symbolically betrays its own impotence with its shocking paucity of generative organs in those few heretical images where he is not depicted wearing wrestling trunks. Conversely, young Sothoth, the one in all, the all-in-one, recognizes no boundaries and has an infinitude of incarnations. Lumerat will, Gozer the Gozerian, and the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Young Sothoth is everywhere at once and is perhaps the sentient interstitial plasma that separates our universe from an infinity of parallel ones where the stars are always right and nobody loses their license for driving around with an unopened pint of space meat in the truck. I was holding it for a friend. Why didn't you tell me, Darrell? Perhaps it is even the numinous consciousness of the multiverse itself, struggling towards self-awareness. What young Sothoth truly is beggars comprehension and renders description obsolete. The conjuring of iridescent globes is all in your mind, man. Aloof from his followers, staying in contact via only the occasional While Cthulhu remains aloof from his followers, staying in contact via only the occasional weird wet dream, and offering only good fishing and plentiful tacky costume jewelry. Yog Sothoth offers access to all times and all places, and the secret wisdom of all ages, and the eldritch password codes, the unfathomable Wi-Fi of the other gods. Seriously, why does it only sound believable if it's old stuff? No matter how ridiculous it is. Serious, the sillier it is, the older it is. Yog Sothoth is the key of the gate and the guardian of the gate. Now, the advantages of having all of these incarnations in one place should be patently obvious to anyone who's ever lost their own keys. Or tried to stop at multiple floors of the Omni. And unlike Cthulhu, young Sothoth actually reaches out and touches his followers, especially the ladies. Where the whipper will, whipper won't. Yes, for all his otherworldliness, young Sothoth is emphatically masculine. For he so loveth the world that he giveth his misbegotten sons upon us with fecundity you can set your farmer's almanac by. And the symbolic aspects of the life of Yog Sothoth's favorite son on earth should finally give us some traction with the youth of today. Wilbur Whately died while trying to lift a special book from the special collection of the library, fusing that little bit country sacrifice of Jesus with a little bit rock and roll theft of forbidden knowledge of Prometheus. He becomes a son of God, nerds won't be embarrassed to tout as their personal savior. Who needs John Philip Barr, Willem Dafoe, or Jim Caviezel? We've got Dean Stockwell. Just ask yourself, kids, WWWD, or for short, what would Wilbur Whately do? The reasons for switching from Cthulhu to Yog Sothoth are legion, but here I've assembled this handy list. Here from the Home Office in Dunwich, Massachusetts, the top 10 reasons why Yog Sothoth is superior to Cthulhu. Number 10, statues of Yog Sothoth will never be mistaken for Pirates of the Caribbean merchandise. The sea in Yog Sothoth is not just silent, it's also invisible. Number 8, sanity loss for witnessing Yog Sothoth is actually 30% less than the cost of seeing Galactus in the last Fantastic Four movie. Number 7, yes, playing pinball or pachinko is considered a valid form of prayer. Number 6, with apologies to the Lovecraft Historical Society, Yog Sothoth is infinitely easier to depict realistically on film. Check it out! Babylon, no battling brook. You say Yog Sothoth has no minions? I give you the Dow scrubbing bubbles! If you don't think they're agents of the inimical spheres beyond, then obviously you've never seen what they can do to tough caked on soap scum. Wilbur Whately, number 4. Wilbur Whately died for your overdue books. Number 3, complimentary bottomless apostates platter at all Long John Silver's locations. Number 2, if you were a malevolent pan-dimensional deity with inscrutable motives and unspeakable powers, he'd worship you. And number 1, number of Yog Sothoth plushie dolls in circulation, 0. Merchandised. We have bingo, pie gow, and interdimensional laser tag 5 nights a week. If the apocalypse hasn't been coming to you, you should be coming to us. And if the sound of my words are noisome in the eyes of the outer gods, then may the ravening hounds of Tyndalos evanesce from every corner of this hall to devour the entire audience. You see, it really doesn't matter which god we worship or offend, for they are uniform in their divine indifference, which should set us free to shed blood and treasure for the exalted one who will best not serve our needs. Just saying.
Cody and I have done this a bunch of times, and we welcome to this podium Rabbi Lois, who will delight us with Kabbalistic and idolatrous secrets. And in honor of this great event, we're going to sing the Idol Song.
After founding Jews for Cthulhu, my first official act was to lead the most famous of Jews to the mighty tentacle one. Who did I give to the almighty Aurelia? I fed him the obvious kosher tidbits. Elliot Spitzer, he went first. Anthony Weiner, even the old one had a hard time eating Weiner. Bernard Madoff. And as the last Madoff morsel dropped into the belly of the beast, Madoff's wife joined Jews for Cthulhu. Yes, they all came to Cthulhu, every last one of them, and all kosher meat. Oh, praise be, almighty untenable one for accepting all Jews into your mighty many folds. Another good thing about converting to Jews for Cthulhu, after generations of watching only one movie, freaking Fiddler on the freaking Roof, we finally have lots of really good selections, and need I list them to this fine audience? We have Call Girl of Cthulhu, Island of the Fishman, The Bride of Reanimator, and of course, The Dunwich Horror with Sandra D. Terrifying and like fantastic acting, much better than Fiddler on the freaking Roof. Much better. So, you may not know much about Jews for Cthulhu, but we used to have to study 5 books of Moses, the Talmud, the Gemara, the Mishnah, the Kabbalah. Now I devote myself to only one book. You might think it's the Necronomicon, but it's this book. One little guy does it all. I admit it was not published by the Orthodox Union of Rabbis, but it should have been. It should have been. We need a Hebrew version from Chaosium. Hebrew. Let me tell you why. It's accurate. It contains the real wisdom, that's why. I don't have to go to the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Kabbalah. Oy vey! Oy geveld! Oy geveespeer! All those Kabbalah numbers, analyzing, reanalyzing, analyzing, reanalyzing to solve my personal problems. Now I just flip to the chart. Right there, and I follow along, and I can answer any question I need to solve. This is how I figured out what my wife was, and I think Deacon Cody mentioned it. I'm just going to flip right to her. Where is she? I think she's on 57. There she is. If you haven't seen a photo of my wife, this book helped me figure out at long last what I married after my bar mitzvah at the age of 13. I wish somebody had told me. Cthulhu doesn't care what we marry. We can have sex with squids for all he cares. He doesn't care. In the immortal words of the shadow over Innsmouth, which predicted the existence of our very congregation, they sullenly banded together in some sort of fellowship and understanding. They ate bacon and eggs and reconstituted juice and bitter bad coffee, despising the world as if they had access to other and preferable spheres of entity. And this is who we are, my friends. Thank you for letting Jews join Cthulhu.
And now, of course, another selection from our cultist choir. Crawling chaos, come for me, how's that for alliteration? Arthur Macker's The White People. And the essence of sin really is in the taking of heaven by storm, it seems to me, said Ambrose. It appears to me that it is simply an attempt to penetrate into another and higher sphere in a forbidden manner. You can understand why it is so rare. There are few indeed who wish to penetrate into other spheres, higher or lower, in ways allowed or forbidden. Men in the mass are amply content with life as they find it. Therefore, there are few saints and sinners in the proper sense, are fewer still. And men of genius who partake sometimes of each character, rare also. Yes, on the whole, it is perhaps harder to be a great sinner than a great saint. There's something profoundly unnatural about sin, is that what you mean? Exactly. Holiness requires as great or almost as great an effort, but holiness works on lines that were natural once. It is an effort to recover the ecstasy that was before the fall. But sin is an effort to gain the ecstasy and the knowledge that pertain alone to angels. And in making this effort, man becomes a demon. I told you that the mere murderer is not therefore a sinner. That is true, but the sinner is sometimes a murderer. Gilles de Rais is an instance. So you see that while the good and the evil are unnatural to man, as he now is, to man the social, civilized being, evil is unnatural in a much deeper sense than good. The saint endeavors to recover a gift which he has lost. The sinner tries to obtain something which was never his. In brief, he repeats the fall. Real sin consists then in taking heaven by storm. Real sin is the mirror image and the first cousin of sanctity. Both are spiritual in nature, neither is fleshly or physical, and both are heroic. Can there be heroes of sin? This is what Machen makes us ask, not villains. Of course there are villains of sin, but can there be heroes of sin? We might think of Milton's Satan, the ultimate Invictus, the captain of his soul. That he is, even though he ends in hell. True, God has closed the best harbors to him, but he sails where he will, his craft a barge on the sulphur lake. In him, the modern redefinition of hell proposed by C.S. Lewis makes some sense, and I think it is the only case in which it does. Hell is the rewarding, the granting of the desire of the godless to be without God. Where is the torment in that? The common profane man, the muddled hedonist, the irreligious and unthinking does not care one whit about the fellowship of God, and thus will not miss it. But the Miltonic Satan, the great Satan, suffers for lack of God. Not that he wants to be with God. No, he wants to be God. Nay, he feels that he is. And what torments him is the tragedy, the injustice of the world in which he is not the deity. What of the hero of faith? Is he the opposite? And can we think of an example? I wonder if the essence of faith is receptivity, the gladful acknowledgement of receptivity, gratitude for grace. If so, then I fear there can be no heroes of faith, for heroism is self-exalting. It must be, since it's a bringing to bear the reserves of one's own force. It is works, not faith. The hero, as the ancient Greeks knew, was a rival of God, or at least a lesser colleague of God, a demigod. And then we're back to Satan. But perhaps there is an available prototype for the faith hero. I think perhaps the fanatic Kierkegaard has provided him. Kierkegaard wrote of the knight of faith, a friend of God, who at his friend's bidding goes questing into a howling wilderness, a chartless waste, where as much as one might desire the pointing way markers of conventional morality and belief, one lacks them. This is the path that mystics and pioneer thinkers tread, often unable to gain a straight course. Kierkegaard's knight was the patriarch Abraham, whom God had summoned to offer his son as a sacrifice. How could God summon a man so to smash the tablets of the divine laws which say thou shalt do no murder? Kierkegaard saw the dangerous vision of the truth, that the word of truth is a living word. The moment we stop our ears against its frightful voice in the name of some comforting truth enshrined from the past, we have made an idol of the old truth, and worse yet, a club with which to bludgeon the new truth to death. Old truth that bids us ignore new truth has forfeited its identity as the truth, and to cover up this fact, it hurls the epithet sinner, rebel against the heretic, the heeder of new truth. And thus, it happens that Kierkegaard's knight of faith wears the prophetic mantle of Macken's real sinner. They're one and the same. Let me put it another way. The saint is the one who does the terribly difficult thing of climbing the ladder of spiritual ascent, a ladder that is coated with the venerable gold of the religious tradition. All will praise him if he makes it to the top, and he will deserve the praise. It is a feat few achieve, and not to be despised. Certainly, I do not speak ill of it. The knight of faith, the real sinner, is climbing too, only he is climbing up a Babel tower of his own building. He is seeking unauthorized access to heaven. He wants to know, like Faust, like Prometheus, who are his only gods, what secrets they are that Jehovah so jealously guards. In plain terms, he wants to know the truth that orthodoxy is afraid to know, for which it can make no room on its narrow shelf of holy and well-worn relics. The saint takes a spiritual journey along the path prescribed and well-beaten with holy footprints. He uses the conventional doctrines and symbols to their best advantage. But the sinner, the real sinner, dares to question and even to reject those forms and names and paths. If he can leap high and far enough, he will even get for a moment beyond all our sheltering religious systems, all our inherited philosophies and worldviews, and he will reach the void of outer space, the bare suchness which no doctrine can contain and which mandates no doctrine. The nihil, the nothing. And in that moment he will know that there can be no God to delineate truth and reality for him, that even God's word is God's opinion, and he himself can speak into being his own meaning, as God did in the dawn of all things. It is an airless heaven he has reached for a moment, but one where the stars shine all the brighter for it. He will return to earth, to walk among the familiar landmarks and familiar faces, but no longer familiar to himself. The Eden of simplicity, convention, and assumption is forever barred for him, though all about still sport blissfully within. They may see him as trapped in hell like Milton's Satan, but he would rather rule it than be a docile slave in heaven. Well, let's get back to the festivities. Brother Darrell has copies of the Sermon on the Mount, which is most of my previous Cthulhu Prayer Breakfast sermons, and you can get them at his table upstairs. So let's say we sing one of my favorites, Strangled in the Everlasting
Strangled in the
Great Cthulhu loves me? The answer is simple, it doesn't. You mean no more to him than an anchovy on a slice of pizza, but what a way to go. Speaking of going, that brings us to a close, so let me give the benediction. Go now in the name of Sathagwa, Great Cthulhu, and him who is not to be named.